Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Houghton. This is our presentation about Strategy 2, which is Total Physical Response and Total Physical Response Storytelling, and Strategy 4, which is Visual Scaffolding. Our project is by Bridget Brown, Kristen Houghton, and Haley Johnson. So to start off, let's talk about Strategy 2, Total Physical Response, and Total Physical Response Storytelling. So total physical response uses physical movement to teach and reinforce language. The teacher gives a word, then shows corresponding action with the word. Teachers repeat, and then the students repeat that action. This strategy focuses on listening comprehension first, then speaking, and it copies how students learn their first language. Total physical response storytelling builds on total physical response by adding storytelling, repetition, and student involvement. The teacher narrates a story while the students act it out. So that's kind of just an overall summary of both total physical response, or TPR, and total physical response storytelling, TPRS. Here's a little bit even more about total physical response in specific. So total physical response is a strategy that is used to help students acquire a second language. And the people who created this strategy based it on the way that children acquire their first language when they're first learning how to speak and how to communicate. TPR involves teachers using the natural sequence in which language is developed to help their students acquire the second language. So part of that natural sequence is hearing commands from adults and then copying those commands. So it involves teaching the child commands, acting them out, and then gradually taking away the physical demonstration of these commands so that the child later on will learn to respond to only the verbal commands and not have to rely on the physical demonstration together with the verbal command. The steps for total physical response. So these are from our textbook, Harold and Jordan. The first step is to choose vocabulary to physicalize. So basically you need to choose a few phrases that you might use in your classroom, or just easy, simple commands for students to copy and learn, but that maybe only start with introducing a few at a time, not more than like 2 or 3 at a time. Which is the next one, introduce vocabulary gradually, only introduce a couple at a time, and then we'll slowly add more on later. Drop the physical modeling. So after the students have had a lot of practice with the physical modeling, with the teacher doing the demonstration of the command, you can drop that and just give them the verbal command to see if they know how to respond without the physical demonstration. Add additional commands. So once they've gotten down a few commands, then you can add more, but don't add more than like 3 at a time. Add additional responses. So this is finding different ways that the student can help to learn these commands other than just copying them. So you can do things like drawing a picture, pointing to pictures of the command, or having the students be able to take turns demonstrating the command themselves. And then play games for additional progress. So playing games is a great way for students to learn these commands. We're going to play a game in just a second. That is going to be an example of one game that you can play to help students learn these commands. And then lastly, periodically review your use of TPR and plan to improve and expand your use of the strategy. So whenever you're teaching something, it's always good and important to practice, to check in with yourself and think about how you can improve yourself and how you can improve your teaching. All right, now let's play a game. So we're going to play a game that you probably have heard of, but it will be a great game to teach your students to practice commands. And the game is Simon Says. So in Simon Says, we I'm going to give you a command, something that you have to do. And if I say Simon says, you do the command. If I don't say Simon says, don't do the command. Don't do what I say. I'm going to try to trick you into doing it. And if you do it, you're going to be out. Okay? So if I say Simon says, do it. If I don't say Simon says first, don't do it. Okay? So the first time, I'm also going to demonstrate them as I say them. Okay? So Simon says stand up. Simon says jump 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Simon says spin around. Okay, sit down. I didn't say Simon says, so if you sat down, you're out. Okay, now Simon says sit down. Simon says touch your head. Simon says touch your nose. Touch your ears. I didn't say Simon says, if you touch your ears, you're out. Okay, Simon says touch your ears. Simon says clap 5 times. Simon says wave your hand. Simon says pat your head and keep patting it. Stop patting your head. I didn't say Simon says. Okay, Simon says stop patting your head. Simon says fold your arms. Like this, fold your arms. Simon says be quiet and ready to listen. Okay, so we're going to do it again, but this time I'm not going to demonstrate the commands, and I'm going to change up the order a little bit. Okay, Simon says touch your ears. Simon says touch your head. Touch your nose. I didn't say Simon says, so if you did it, you're out. Simon says fold your arms. Simon says clap 5 times. Stand up. I didn't say Simon says, so if you stood up, you're out. Simon says spin around. Jump 3 times. I didn't say Simon says. Simon says jump 3 times. Simon says sit down. Wave your hand. I didn't say Simon says. Simon says wave your hand. Simon says stop waving your hand. Simon says be quiet and ready to listen. Alright, thanks for playing the game with me. That's a fun way that you can teach your students to practice these commands. Okay, here's a quick summary of total physical response. So total physical response involves using commands together with the physical demonstrations. The physical demonstration is gradually removed, and games and activities are a great way to learn through TPR, total physical response. And storytelling is also a great way to implement TPR. I didn't talk too much about that because we're going to talk about that on the next few slides. And I'm going to turn the time over to Bridget to talk more about that.
Hi, I'm Bridget. And as Kristen said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the total physical response in storytelling. There's a few things that you should know about how to use TPR storytelling. You choose vocabulary words and say the words and show the action to the word and repeat it and have the students repeat your action. You ask the students questions that can be answered with just one answer and by showing that action. You tell students a short story and have them show the actions while you are sharing the story. There's a couple ways you can differentiate that for younger learners. You could only do 1 or 2 sentences or a phrase at a time. And for advanced learners, you could do it where they make up their own story or make up their own actions for words. How does TPR storytelling work? It's an effective tool for ELL students because it copies the way that children learn their first language by hearing and doing before speaking. This helps to reduce stress and anxiety because there's no pressure to talk too soon. It also builds connections between language and action, which will improve memory and understanding. Students are able to see how words and sentences work together in meaningful context. TPR storytelling also promotes active listening. They are interacting with the language physically. And lastly, it has repetition in the stories being told, which has always helped students to retain information. A good activity for this is we're going to read a story. The story that I chose was a familiar story to students. It's Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So first of all, you would introduce the words that you want the students to use. The first one I chose was bowl. So you would put your hand in a cupping shape and pretend you're eating out of a bowl. And this is how you would say bowl and demonstrate that, and then have the students repeat after you. Another one is chair. So you would have the students start standing and they would sit down. The next one is bed. So you would put your hands like this, so that students knew that they were going to bed. The next one is hot, and you could blow on your hands. So when you would say hot, students would blow. And the last one would be cold. And you could put your hands here, and you could say cold, so students would know that that was cold. So that's the first step, is to introduce the vocabulary. You say the words, you show the gestures, and you have the students repeat it. Next, you narrate the story. It's important that when you narrate the story, you speak slowly, you repeat words and phrases as needed for the students to be able to make sure that they understand. And lastly, you ask questions so that the students know what questions you're asking, and that they can answer. So I'm going to read a little bit of the story and show you how it would go. So you would say, this is the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. There are three bears, Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear. They live in a house in the forest. They have three bowls of porridge. So when you said bowls, you would do that. Papa's is hot. Okay. Mama's is warm. Baby's is cold. They go for a walk. A girl, Goldilocks, comes to the house. She sees the bowls. She eats. So I'm going to stop there, but that's how it would go. And you would continue to introduce more words like big. And you could show big by your hands, or small. You could show small by your hands. You can show going for a walk. You could have students show that you're going for a walk. So as students get the vocabulary that you have taught them first, then you introduce more vocabulary. So in summary, typically this strategy, total physical response storytelling, is used with younger students or ELL, English language learner students, but it can be used with all ages. It can be used to introduce vocabulary, or it could be used to introduce classroom procedures in your classroom so that students know what your expectations are of them. It's an active learning approach that supports comprehension. It's active, they're participating, and it supports them comprehending and understanding. And it helps to develop verbal fluency and encourages participation of ELLs. It's active. They're not just sitting back. They have to listen and they have to participate. So that's our strategy for total physical response storytelling.
Hi, so today we're going to be diving into an important teaching method called visual scaffolding. This means using pictures, drawing, gestures, and other visuals to help students understand and remember new words and ideas better. Imagine trying to learn a new language. How hard would it be if you only heard words without seeing or doing anything? Visuals make those words come alive and easier to grasp. Why do you think it's easier to learn when you see pictures or actions with words? Exactly. Visuals help bridge the gap between new English words and what students already understand from their own experiences. This is especially helpful for English learners who might find long explanations tricky. Experts emphasize that visuals are not just helpful, they're essential for making lessons clearer for English learners. When students see pictures or real objects connected to vocab, they create stronger mental links, also combining visuals with gestures like pointing or acting something out, or even having students draw their own pictures. Helps their brains absorb the information deeply. Can anyone think of a time when using your hands or moving helped you remember something? Exactly. Using different senses like sight, movement, and touch makes learning more powerful. This is called a multisensory approach, and it works wonders for all students, not just English learners. Now let's look at how teachers actually bring this strategy to the classroom. There are 4 main steps. First, they pick the most important words or concepts for the lesson. These are the words students really need to understand. Next, they find or create visuals. This can be photos, simple drawings, videos, or even real objects called realia. During teaching, they show these visuals while explaining the ideas. This makes the lesson clearer and helps students stay focused. Lastly, teachers encourage students to add their own visuals like drawing pictures or making flashcards, which makes learning active and personal. What kind of pictures or videos have helped you learn something new before? Great example, videos combine sight and sound, making them excellent tools for understanding processes or stories. Here are some real ways teachers use visuals in different ages. In 2nd grade, a teacher might bring photos from a field trip showing community helpers like firefighters and doctors. Students then write stories about them using those photos. In 3rd grade, students match pictures of weather types, such as sunny or stormy, to vocab words, which help with word recognition. In 5th grade, a teacher uses a labeled diagram of the water cycle to guide students as they describe each stage using sentence starters. In 7th grade, comic strips are used to explain idioms like "it's raining cats and dogs," helping students understand figurative language. If you were teaching a new topic, what type of visuals would you use to help your classmates? Perfect! Visuals that are colorful and dynamic can grab attention and improve learning. Next, we're going to have a little butterfly life cycle activity. The 4 stages are egg, caterpillar, the cocoon, and butterfly. I'll show you pictures of each stage and ask you to act them out. Ready? First, we're going to curl up small like an egg. Then we're going to wiggle like a caterpillar crawling. Then we're going to freeze like a Acrylius hanging. And then you're going to flap your arms like a butterfly flying. Great job, guys. This is a multi-sensory way to learn vocab and concepts. Visual scaffolding works best when students are involved. They can make vocab cards, draw pictures, or add photos to digital folders. This gives students ownership of their learning and helps with memory. Teachers also keep these visuals organized in binders on classroom walls or online platforms so they can use them again and again. Question: how would you like to create or use visuals to help your learning? That's a great way to learn. Creating visuals makes learning active and personal. To sum up, visual scaffolding makes lessons clearer, helps everyone participate, and supports all learners, especially English language learners. It turns abstract words into concrete images and experiences. For our final question, how do you think visuals could help you in your future classes? Thank you for being such great listeners and participants. Remember, visuals are powerful tools for making learning easier and more fun.